This is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about What If Episode 6. What if Killmonger rescued Tony Stark?
Was it worth it? My cousin.
Yeah, I did what I had to do.
For what? A throne?
For vengeance. For my father. And for all my brothers and sisters who suffered through oppression while you just sat back and watched.
You believe the cure for human suffering is more suffering.
The cure is power, and now I have it.
Because you stole it, power unearned can be a very volatile force, cousin. It will get the best of you eventually, on your plane or on ours.
Welcome back, fellow Defenders, to this episode of our discussion about What If Episode 6. What if Killmonger rescued Tony Stark? Yes, I am one of your meow meow hosts, John.
I'm one of your other hosts, Derek.
Wow. Black Panther.
That's where we're going. Okay.
Yes. Wow.
I just assumed that was the Mjolnir you were trying to say.
Yeah, that's where I was going. I was like, Thor wasn't in
No,
this one.
meow meow.
Okay.
The other meow meow. So
The other meow meow.
I'm the kitten of the group. I am Chris.
Derek is the old Tom of the group, and I am nestled lovely and snugly in between the two of them.
There you go.
There you go. Gentlemen, what did you think? This was an interesting episode, wasn't it?
It certainly was. There's been a lot of darkness in the episodes of What If over the last couple of weeks, making me think the Watcher just really likes watching snuff movies. What seems to be going on in these universes, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we've had zombies. I'm like going, what if Michael Myers invaded the Marvel universe? I mean, it would just be machete glorious, basically.
Or will the last 3 episodes be, what if the Avengers were actually clowns working in a circus?
Like in WandaVision.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know. I just felt like this was missing another 10 minutes. Like, what happened to the final remaining 5 minutes of this show, this episode?
Well, we'll definitely talk about it when we get into our
Yeah.
points about the episode and our overall feelings on it. But I agree, this is the one that felt like, oh, hang on a second, we're ending this story. That's the end of the story. It felt like the big change that had happened should have happened about halfway through, and then potentially we could have continued it right here. It felt like this is coming back next week for the rest of the episode, is what it felt like, definitely. But we don't know. This absolutely could be what happened. What will happen? We could have in season 2 it coming back and continuing on from this point. Yeah,
I guess it's one of those things, isn't it? Because the actual what if is that Tony Stark was rescued, but it's all the knock-on consequences, and of course, there's some big knock-on consequences here. And particularly for the diplomatic relationship between Wakanda and the USA, but also for the Black Panther, big time. So, I mean, it's just really sort of that knock-on effect, which really just begins to amplify I guess as we've been saying, the ripples, but it certainly, darker again. And interesting one, because it felt, obviously, with it being down on Earth, rather than in space or other realms. It's an interesting take on it. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it again. I enjoyed it again for sure. But it'd be nice to have some Candy Floss episodes where it gets even better. Like they have, an 8-pack of abs rather than a 6-pack. What if,
that seems like a really small change, and only for a certain segment of the audience.
A 26-pack of abs or something like that.
Again on the abs. What about if Captain Marvel had returned at the start of the Avengers, and then we had Captain Marvel running through all the Avengers movies? Like that'd be a big change with someone that powerful being in the central role of the Avengers right from the start. That would be a cool change I'd like to see. I'm sure there'd be some really interesting, fun things that could happen if you had Carol Danvers there from the start. But look, these are all possibilities. It's all the what if universe. I certainly don't want to continue to repeat ourselves saying we want more at the end of every episode, because that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be leaving you wanting more, and it's done that every episode, just like all the comics had done for 20 years. So, but it just felt this had a cut-off point at the end of it that felt like we're coming back next week for another episode.
Yes.
We may be, because we don't know about what it's going to be next week, of course. But
that is
let's
true.
get into discussing the episode, though.
Exactly. So, with that, do you want to give us the episode details, Derek?
Absolutely. Executive producers on the show, Brian Andrews, AC Bradley, Brad Winterbaum, and of course, Kevin Feige. Head writer for the show is AC Bradley this week. The episode was written by Matthew Chauncey once again, and directed by Brian Andrews. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for the episode?
Sure. One rescue can change the world. On a visit to Afghanistan in 2008, Tony Stark is rescued from an attack by Lieutenant Eric Stevens, codename Killmonger. Killmonger uncovered a plot by Stark Industries COO Obadiah Stane to remove Tony from the company. Eric is rewarded for his discovery with the role of COO as Stane is arrested. Working together, the killer leaders create an automated combat drone led by Jarvis AI and powered by vibranium from Wakanda. In order to create an army of these soldiers, they make a deal with Ulysses Klaue, using Lieutenant James Rhodes to hide their involvement. Black Panther arrives to break up the deal and retrieve the stolen vibranium from Klaue, but Killmonger is waiting and executes both James Rhodes and T'Challa. He returns to Stark Industries and kills Tony Stark, blaming his murder on retaliation from the Wakandans. Killmonger gains access to Wakanda by using Ulysses Klaue, but kills him and offers him up to the Dora Milaje in return for a meeting with King T'Chaka. Eric reveals he is the lost nephew of T'Chaka and wants his place in their society. With the US and Wakanda on the precipice of war, the US creates the drone army and sends them to the outskirts of the hidden city. Killmonger convinces the Wakandan leaders to allow the army in, cutting off their connection to external satellites. As the Wakandans defeat the robot army, T'Chaka selects Eric Killmonger as their next Black Panther. But the young Princess Shuri is not convinced of Eric's intentions and shares the murders he committed on his quest for power with Pepper Potts. Together they agree to expose the truth about the new Black Panther and to stop the war between the USA and Wakanda.
You know the way Microsoft Word allows you to do a word count? I wonder, could we do a word count of the times the word kill was used in that, or murder was used in our synopsis this week? Because there's a lot of death. Killmonger is certainly earning his name and adding to his the marks on his body throughout the episode, isn't he?
He certainly is.
And we definitely get a scene where we see him cut himself and add to it, literally just after a kill.
Yeah,
definitely.
Definitely. Yeah. Let's get into our top 3 discussion points with our first point. What if we had seen this before? What is the name of that cinematic universe movie that has inspired this alteration to the Marvel Universe? And I guess there's 2 here. There's Iron Man 1, with Tony in his convoy selling his Stark Industries tech and weapons to the different warring factions in Afghanistan. And there is also the Black Panther movie around Killmonger, and that certainly is the one that really blossoms here towards the end. But importantly, it really affects the whole Iron Man series, this slight change in Afghanistan, and to the point where I guess you don't have an Iron Man 2, which I guess we can all breathe a sigh of relief about. But we sadly don't get the Marvel Christmas movie either, which is Iron Man 3.
Yeah,
and of course I do like AIM, so it's kind of it's a shame we don't get AIM in the MCU.
It's true. That's true. It really does affect everything from this point onwards. That opening intro with the Watcher talking through, the creation of a hero, that idea that if Tony Stark had been captured, of course, he would have created the Iron Man armor, and that leads on to everything from there forward. He is the instigator in this storyline, at least, to the entirety of those 24 movies, wasn't it? All the way through the cinematic universe to when he finally snaps his fingers at the end, saving the universe, using the Thanos gauntlet, with all the stones inside. So I did like that they put that at the start. This is the impact Tony has had over the years, but what happens if he's saved here and dies at the hands of Killmonger effectively? Well, everything that we've seen so far doesn't happen in the way that we've seen it effectively.
No, not at all. And it's interesting because we knew how instrumental he was. But when you actually start to think of how that one small change, and it is just essentially that one small change at the beginning, it changes everything. It does really change, because you do lose the Avengers. Obviously, there will be an invasion by Loki, but there'll be no Tony Stark to pull together the Avengers with Nick Fury.
Technically, it is Nick Fury that pulls together the Avengers. Tony Stark is just a consultant that has no skin in the game. He just happens to be brought on board. So we will still have the Avengers, but it'd be a different configuration.
Yeah, and Tony Stark was instrumental in closing that hole above New York, where the armies were invading. I mean, you know, in Iron Man 1, he is captured, and that's where we get the Iron Suit from.
Yep.
It plays out in a longer form with Obadiah Stane being found out for his involvement, for sure. But I think as well that rescue, that is the change. But actually it changes the Black Panther narrative in the sense that Killmonger comes with a different plan.
Yeah.
Here. So the change is actually the strategy of Killmonger to some respect, which leads to him rescuing Tony Stark, and then infiltrating in and being a confidant of Tony Stark's, where he can play the different sides off from one another. Yeah. So, this has huge implications for the creation of the MCU effectively with the first ever movie in Iron Man 1, and one of, you know, one of the best, you know, movies of the MCU in terms of the outcome of that. So I think let's get into our second point here. What if there was a small change? What if, you know, the premise of this episode, as we said, is, Killmonger rescues Tony Stark in Afghanistan and brings him safely back to the USA. We have no Tony Stark in a cave. No shrapnel around the heart. I do like that throwaway comment about we could possibly do a miniature arc reactor, and it's like, no, we'll use vibranium in the automated drones that they're going to develop.
I love that Tony even says, no, that's a stupid idea.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a nice little touch.
But he does still see the bombs from Stark Industries landing around the men in Afghanistan. So he still has that concept that it's probably not a great idea that we're selling bombs to the enemies in enemy armies effectively. So at least he is still changing his mind about his warmongering ways and looking at ways to change the army so men aren't involved and they aren't possibly going to be having bombs dropped on them by Stark Industries.
Well, he ultimately says we need to sell better. So it's not that he's not going to, it's not that he's not going to sell it. It's just that you need to sell better. Like possibly not top of the range Stark weaponry to people that are firing it, you know, give them a bow and arrow or a large stick, you know, with Stark Industries sort of chiseled on the side of it or something like that. But I think, you know, that's the small change. But I think, as mentioned briefly in the point one, the interesting thing for me is that actually there's a change before that. Because Killmonger has decided to put himself there in order to rescue him and for the events that follow, which is really devious of Killmonger. And we know he was, because he was a bit like that really in the Black Panther movie. This is where he's just the pathway to what he wants to do. He's changed it in his mind. His plan has changed, and which puts him, you know, 400 clicks away from his unit to go and rescue Tony Stark and bring him back. Absolutely. And he's done all that. It's so premeditated at that press conference. I love the fact that he basically exposes Obadiah Stane right there in front of everyone.
Absolutely.
So,
and his deal with the Ten Rings Society. And unfortunately, I do have to remind everybody we haven't seen Shang-Chi still, so we don't know if there's a direct connection to what's happening here and what happened in the movie that's just been out a few weeks. But I presume they are mentioning that Ten Rings Society in this episode because they would suspect everybody's seen that movie by now. So just to mention it again, because obviously the Ten Rings Society did form a part of the original Iron Man movie, but just as a reminder that the Ten Rings Society has gone all the way back to Iron Man 1, it's nice to see it mentioned in here.
Agree. I will say I've seen it.
Oh, excellent.
Yes. I will not be confirming or denying anything because I want to keep you guys in suspense. Our fellow defenders will know if there is or not any relationship between these 2 points. But yeah, I just don't want to ruin it for you guys.
Oh, of course not. Of course not.
Yeah.
But the title of the movie is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and I presume that is connected to the Ten Rings. But anyway, we will move on. Hope you enjoyed the movie, Chris. We will be talking about it once we've seen the movie, of course, on the podcast as well. Make sure you stay subscribed to TV Podcast Industries to get that. But let's get back to this particular episode. I do really enjoy the other individual changes that happen really quickly. I love that, that Killmonger gets the role of chief security officer at Stark Industries during this press conference, which was Happy Hogan's job.
Yep.
And I think by the end of the press conference or a tiny bit later, he becomes COO, which is Pepper Potts' job. She takes that over from Obadiah Stane. So, and then she eventually becomes CEO of Stark Industries. So effectively, he's just pushed aside both of, Tony Stark's main confidants, all the people that would have been around him and kind of helped him out, to create the killer force at the top of Stark Industries that is Killmonger and Tony Stark. So, I think that was quite interesting, wasn't it?
Definitely. Like, as I say, it's just that, it's that plan. It's that premeditation of Killmonger, which, like, I loved from Black Panther and his, his reasons for it. And we get a bit of that when he kills Rhodey as well here. Why are you wearing the uniform of your oppressors?
Yeah.
So his rationale is still there, very much.
Yeah.
And even though there is the big battle at Claw's ship and reclamation yard, I like the fact that, we have the big battle between Killmonger and Black Panther in the Black Panther movie. Here it's transferred to what we see in the Age of Ultron movie as well. Yeah. But here, whereas Black Panther had the tech and knew the tech of the Black Panther suit, here it's Killmonger using Stark tech again to effectively immobilize and disarm the Black Panther. And again, 2 deaths here, which is then found out by Tony Stark. He realizes that he is being sort of taken for a mug here.
Well, yeah.
But the all-seeing Jarvis AI, what does he say? Never play Clue with Jarvis, because he can always see. I did like that.
Yeah, there's a really good point that you make as well about Age of Ultron, because the fact that Killmonger has convinced Tony to build these drones has pushed Tony to push the Jarvis AI into these drones as well. Something that he would only have done in his own suit, and something that also eventually led to Ultron. So that's kind of interesting as well.
Yeah.
So that it changed to Age of Ultron too.
Yeah, 100%. I just want to call out one thing. The voice acting from the Tony Stark, Obadiah Stane, and Pepper Potts, voice actors who literally, or actors I should say, who've lent their voice. Too much so. Mick Wingert is the gentleman who played Tony Stark. I actually thought they got Robert Downey Jr. back. It was spot on at the beginning. I was like,
it was really good.
I thought for a second, oh wait, maybe they're just gonna save him and then kill him quickly, and that's just the audio they ripped from the original movie.
Right.
I thought it was, because it was that, and it wasn't until the end that I was like, okay, maybe they got Gwyneth Paltrow back, because I was just like, maybe this was the big surprise this week. Hey, you know what? We actually got RDJ and Gwyneth Paltrow back. Surprise! No, was like, wow, okay, they exactly sound like those people.
They did a really good job, and certainly, you know, having the specific lines that were said in Iron Man 1 now, 12 years ago, is that right? 12 or 13 years ago, having the actors say those lines in such a great way, you know, I'm sure the reference of being able to use the original lines to practice over and over again to make sure they nail it. I totally get what you mean. At the beginning, it does feel like they've just cribbed those lines directly from the movie. So, but there are certainly differences with them. With Pepper Potts, yes, she's doing a great impression of Gwyneth Paltrow's voice, without a doubt. Obadiah Stane, hey, look, nobody sounds like Jeff Bridges. There's nobody in the world that sounds like him. He's such a distinctive voice. So I don't think it was necessary for that voice actor to nail Obadiah Stane, because I don't think anybody else can than Jeff Bridges. But it was great to see everybody else back once again. So many great actors from the MCU once again coming back to reprise their roles in here. Yeah,
and it was even the actress who played Shuri. She played Tamar in The Runaways, and she's actually in Deathloop. She plays Juliana in Deathloop the game. She is that actress. Spot on, Shuri. It was just it sounded like the actress from the film, so I was shocked. And yes, you're right. Having those original lines to crib, to practice on, probably made it perfectly. But anyway, let's get back to the main. I just wanted to call them out because it really did stump me initially.
Absolutely. And since we mentioned it before about Leslie Bibb coming back, who played Christine Everhart, she came back for like a one-line part in the episode two weeks ago. It's really good to see her back in this role that she made from Iron Man 1. Of course, that's the way they're recording this. They bring her back for 4 or 5 episodes, potentially, or 5 or 6 lines to record when she comes back into the studio. That makes loads of sense, you know, having everybody coming back that way, having Paul Bettany back, having Jon Favreau back, where they've only provided a line here or there over the last couple of weeks. Just having them back to do multiple lines and spreading them across multiple episodes makes loads of sense. So yeah, really enjoyed that too. But definitely have to call out having one of the best voice actors of all time, reprising his role as Ulysses Klaue here, having Andy Serkis back here, reprising his role. Cause his version of that role of Ulysses Klaue is so distinctive that I don't know whether anybody else could have done those lines and delivered them the way he does, in the movies. You know, they certainly could do the character from Marvel Avengers Assemble, the cartoon that's on, Disney Plus. I'm sure they could get the actor that plays that role, but you know that Ulysses Klaue sounds different from the other, cartoon version of the character. So it's great to see Andy Serkis coming back in here to do it. Yeah,
definitely. And I think the interesting thing is, you know, Ulysses Klaue, live on the edge, die on the edge. He still dies in this, this timeline because of the nature of his business, I guess. That doesn't change. It's just
pretty much exactly the same way too.
Well, pretty much, yeah. But he's more involved, it would seem, with Killmonger in terms of leaking this meetup between Rhodes and him to the Wakandans, that flushes out the Black Panther here for Killmonger then to get rid of. And so, of course, you know, the big change is you have the death of T'Challa, the Black Panther here. He doesn't die in Black Panther, but here, you know, you see the funeral procession with the Dora Milaje here in this, coupled with Rhodey. Yeah. And I thought that was really sort of meaningful. So obviously given, what has happened with, Chadwick Boseman and so on, it felt quite poignant really. So Klaue's involvement really, you know, still ends up in his death. And, you know, on top of that, you have then not only T'Challa, not only Rhodey and Klaue, but you have Tony Stark here, because of the Jarvis AI, really recording what Killmonger has done. If I was Tony Stark, I just would not have stayed in the same room. You know, why would you put down the hatches, you know, these steel, blinds effectively, and stay in the same room? I would step out and then seal him in and then send in the drone. And
I think the arrogance of Tony's abilities has always been one of his downfalls, really, hasn't it? It's one of those things. Never got him killed before, of course, but
and he doesn't have the Iron Man suit this time, so he
has created the drone and believes that that his abilities could get one over on Killmonger. Everything that's programmed in there are all of the moves exactly as he says, but definitely one of the things that you don't do is go up against the co-creator of the exact same weapon and say, I'm going to use this weapon on you because, hey, Killmonger knows exactly what went into that as well. He's a very intelligent guy. So that was a really silly move, a really bad move from Tony.
Yeah. And here, interestingly, Killmonger uses this as the pretext that it's a Wakandan reprisal against Tony Stark for what happened to Black Panther. But here, Killmonger is... And it kind of reflects what he said to Rhodey about, wearing the uniform of your oppressor. But he uses his oppressor in terms of the US Army here in order to get his way into Wakanda to prove effectively his worth as, a potential new Black Panther. He's not just using his bloodline here. Like in Black Panther, he is effectively causing a distraction that he seemingly is not a part of by setting the US against Wakanda and then coming in to say how the Wakandans can destroy this army of drones that have been sent against them. And I thought that was a really neat little change.
Yeah, it's certainly a more complicated plan, isn't it? One of the things everybody will probably remember from the Killmonger character, and after everybody went to see it in the cinema, there was a huge kind of outcry of, Killmonger's methods may be wrong, but his concept is right. And I definitely kept that within the character in here. The conversation he has with Tony before killing him is the line he says of, what's the difference between you and me? Well, the difference is, I can see the difference between you and me and you can't, which I think is a really good line and just underlines what it is that Killmonger's fighting for. This is 8 years before the events of Black Panther. So he's coming at this and initiating his plan 8 years before he initiated that plan in Black Panther, but with a much stronger and much more complex plan that he's enacting here.
Well, I think overall he's just more calculated. Like, he's still got the emotion, but the emotion doesn't get the better of him. And ultimately in Black Panther, it's like the emotion of his cause, of what he's doing. Cause he still had to plan it, but it kind of overrides it to the point where, he's really trying to subjugate everyone in Wakanda that used to be aligned with T'Chaka, and all of that. Here, in this timeline, it's not that the emotion's not there. It's not, and it's certainly the same rationale, but he just feels more calculated or more in control. And so the sense that he proves himself rather than simply says, this is rightfully mine, I'm going to take it.
He's because of the 8-year difference, he's playing on the fact that the Wakandans didn't get the justice they deserved by Claw being found. So Claw has been out in the open for 8 years after killing multiple people in Wakanda in the movie. And he plays on that in order to get himself up and in the position of being able to battle for the title of Black Panther with T'Challa. So there are those differences.
The one thing that did make me go, which was that T'Challa was Black Panther 8 years early.
Early. No, he was in the position of Black Panther when we met him first. T'Chaka is seen as Black Panther back in the 90s, and then T'Challa takes over as Black Panther as his father gets older, and then eventually becomes King of Wakanda.
You're right. Sorry. Yes.
So we didn't see Black Panther at this time, but we know he had been established as Black Panther during that period at some point. So, so it's likely to think, given his age, it's likely to think that he's probably been Black Panther since the time of Iron Man 1, isn't it?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. No, so just, okay, well then that is canon now, I guess, that he has been, or he was, or no, he has been, because it's just an alternate universe. So, yes. Yeah. God, multiverses. Sometimes it's hard. Just with grammar, you're like, has been, will be, won't, right now. Anywho, I really enjoy, aspect of the kind of the duplicity of Killmonger in this to become the kind of more golden golden panther, because he still had some of that kind of yellow shimmer to some of his suit. Absolutely. As he kind of took on.
Yeah, it's the same suit that Shuri created for him when he became Black Panther in the movie, definitely. Yeah.
So looks
Speaking of Shuri, actually, I didn't really mention, again, 8 years earlier, but wow, she looks like a child. She looks like a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old. I don't know whether she should have been aged down that much, but I guess it's about right, isn't it?
She was
about
16
or 17. Yeah. Take off 8 years. Yeah, that's about right. But again, confirmed as a genius in this show as well, just like she was in Black Panther.
Yes, 100%. And that kind of leads us towards the end, to the wrap up this episode, because we essentially Eric has become the Black Panther of Wakanda, and if you want, we can move it on into where this leaves us, our third point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, interestingly as well, though, is that we know there's more to come, because you're right, he's there as Black Panther. In this world, effectively, Wakanda and the US are at war. It's,
World War Wakanda.
Yeah. And, but we have, Pepper Potts and Shuri right at the end, coming together to, effectively expose Killmonger for what he's done and how he has manipulated the events in order to bring him from his Black Panther perch, I guess, and to stop the war between the US and Wakanda, which is effectively built on false intel to both sides.
Yeah.
So I found this interesting. So for me, this was it's kind of where we started at the beginning. So this, I know, Derek, and you made a very fair point, which was every episode so far, we've kind of gone, I wish there was more.
Yeah.
This one actually felt, it was just an abrupt ending with the Shuri Pepper Potts kind of display, discussion, and then the Watcher saying that sometimes new heroes rise up.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. It needed another 3 minutes or so. I don't need another episode. It was a nice contained what if. It just needed an additional minute or two. It just felt so sharp of an ending, if that makes sense. It just felt like they could have just said, and from this springs kind of, and you see rescue, Pepper Potts' rescue, but a Wakandan based rescue, or you see Shuri rise up as her version of the Black Panther from the comic books, or something. It just needed a bit more of it. It was the perfect present. It just needed the bow on top to close off the story.
Okay.
Because it just essentially, unlike the other ones where, you had Thanos with the glove. Like, that was just more in, say, the zombie episode. You had Thanos with the zombie Thanos. Or what did we call him? Zomnas? Or I can't remember. I can't even remember from feedback last episode. But this just felt so... The only word I can say is just an abrupt ending. It was just... It left it too undescribed, if that will say anything.
Okay, I do think there's a problem in the writing of this episode. I'll agree with you there. I don't think another minute of the episode would have resolved it. I think because of the complexity of Killmonger's story and his plan that's going on here, there's so much that they need to get through in the episode that's squeezing it all into, again, another one of the longest episodes we've had so far, 33 minutes by my count, with credits, of course, but it's about a minute or two longer than most of the episodes we've seen so far. So I'm not too sure whether anything they could have done could have finished the episode more than there was. What I'm really happy about is that we did get that scene with Pepper Potts and Shuri as the capper on it, because it's a hopeful end. Because what's happened here is effectively the villain of Black Panther has won. And what does he win? He wins a world war with the US. Black Panther finished with Wakanda opening its, technology to the world and bringing everybody in and bringing everybody along on the journey of the discoveries that they made. It's a really hopeful ending to overall a really hopeful movie. Whereas this story has ended with Killmonger getting his own way and looking to arm the world and starting a war against who he believes are his oppressors. That's a really negative end. That's a really downer end. There's so much death in the episode. It can feel like a downer of an episode. I said at the start, it feels like another downer of an episode, but at least there's a bit of hope at the end that there will be somebody that will rise up in the same way as the Avengers episode, where they all died, ended with Captain Marvel and Captain America effectively rising to start the Avengers in a different way. That is a hopeful end to a real downer of an episode. So at least they had a tag on it. But I do think as it rushes through to the end, trying to get through the complexities of Killmonger's plan, it does feel really stuffed.
Yeah. I get that too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of seeing how it plays out after Killmonger has effectively achieved his objectives in What If that he didn't in Black Panther, I mean, I guess most, probably all, with the exception of the Doctor Strange one, because he ends that universe, have somewhere where there's threads that will continue because it's not the end of time. So that I think is fine. I think, in terms of the hopeful stuff, I think that's really good, really, that, you know, someone has, spotted the duplicitousness of Killmonger. You know, and it confirms Pepper Potts' feelings that she had to him. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, I don't mind some of the bad guys getting their moment of triumph because, I mean, let's face it, literally, most comics and movies do not give them that. Absolutely. I mean, if only for that fleeting moment in time, you know, and Killmonger is, I guess you could say he's a bad guy, but he's an antagonist. You know, his goals could be done in different ways, but he's a trained military tactician from Annapolis. He's, you know, undercover ops, very, very clever, very good at what he's doing, and he's doing it in that way. So he's working in those shadows, you know, because that's his training. He's using military, because that's his training. Yeah. He's affecting diplomacy because that's what he's been trained to do, and he's hugely successful at it. So, that's the only thing I would say. I kind of don't really mind that Killmonger ended off in that position.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that is the interesting thing for the watcher and the choice of What If to look in these stories that would have turned out differently, because effectively every single Marvel movie could have turned out with the antagonist winning. So if it hadn't been for our heroes, so that is the interesting thing. You know, if you look at some of the reviews as time has gone on, they start commenting on the fact that every single Marvel movie ends with the villain getting beaten, right? Well, that is what Marvel's all about. It's about the heroes winning. So if you're going to look in a universe where things are different, of course, looking in on where the villain wins and achieves his goal is a great use of the mechanic of What If. Any other notes about the episode that you want to talk about that we didn't cover within the kind of structure of our points, guys?
None from me.
No, I just wanted to call out, like, it's very interesting that the automaton that was created was, yes, as Killmonger jokes, he was going through an anime phase. But it did look like the Hammer bots from number 2, Iron Man 2. Yeah. Same head. Which I found was fun and interesting, and it looked more and more like those bots than any of the previous.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting. I'm sure that was intentional to tie it in with the movie that will never happen, of course, with the death of Tony Stark. I have to say, one of the call out, they definitely nailed the humor of those Iron Man movies. Loved some of the moments in there. Happy Hogan, knocking out, Obadiah Stane and going, never liked that guy. A great little moment in there. Loved the press conference with Tony Stark where he's saying, what happened to you over there? And he says, I smashed a drink. I consider that a war crime. Have you learned anything from your experience in Afghanistan? Well, I'm never going to a country without a Four Seasons. Loved those lines. There was a really good, knowledge of the humor that Tony Stark and his whole team bring to the Marvel universe. So, great job by Matthew Chauncey on that side of things.
Yeah, definitely.
One final note that we probably should talk about, just the appearance here of Chadwick Boseman in in the vision that Killmonger has after becoming Black Panther. Once again, another really moving moment from Chadwick Boseman. Like this idea of him speaking from beyond the grave. Effectively, it's what's happening here. He's telling Killmonger that he will get punished either in this life, he will get found out and punished, or in the afterlife when he gets to the Wakandan's afterlife, he will be punished there. It's just a really interesting one. I know I'm trying to make sure I deal with this sensitively. We know that Chadwick Boseman was aware of his death before it happened. We know he was aware of his illness. He knew he was very, very sick, and probably was aware of it at the time when he was recording this. So it's interesting that all of the lines that he's spoken in the episodes that he has appeared in have been around death and have been around leaving messages behind effectively for the people that are living past him. I think that's quite an interesting use. And I wonder if Chadwick himself was, in agreement of the lines, if he wanted to leave that behind as his legacy.
Oh yeah, I think so. These performances were or from what we are aware of, were his last performance ever. He recorded these lines just after he had finished another previous film, the one where he was a jazz singer.
Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, was that the?
I think it was. I think it was that. It was that
Yeah.
where he was very, very thin, very sickly looking, and that's where it started to come out like, oh, what was wrong? And he had filmed or recorded these episodes, to our understanding, just after that. So
Okay.
there would definitely be elements of that.
Yeah, because
but
I know
still,
there was
yeah.
even things that have come out after the fact about the movies that he was choosing. He was trying to ensure that he was leaving a better legacy behind than had happened for a lot of black actors in the past, where they were effectively being cast as either criminals or police officers, and that was kind of it. That was where everything lay, and he was making those choices to further the development of what's available for black actors in America. You know, that was certainly an intention that he had. So it's just interesting if he was also building that into his legacy of the MCU as well.
I think so. I think Chadwick Boseman and how he has been brought into these what if episodes has just been very, very well done by the writers, by Marvel, and Chadwick Boseman. I mean, I think a lot of the lines, most of us have said at the time, and a lot of feedback about how, given the context of his death, how they felt more weighty, more poignant, or more emotional for people. And I think there is certainly that intent here to provide that platform of, to do good in life, that, all these different messages. I think it's something meaningful, at least. So I think it's been a really well handled by this creative team, for sure.
Yep. Very quickly, just want to think a nice fun piece is that if you're on any of the interwebs at the moment, you will see a fan created what if Terrence Howard was in this episode as Rhodey.
Excellent.
Someone has basically photoshopped him in and drew him in, and I laughed because I was like, oh yeah, they should have they could have done something funny there. Obviously that completely null and voids all the rest of it, but I just thought I saw it and I went, that was well done, internet.
So with that, guys, Derek, do you defend what if Killmonger rescued Tony Stark, episode 6?
I don't know. I'm kind of torn here. I really like the episode. I love the concept. This is absolutely a what if comic. This is exactly the kind of thing you would see. Killmonger wins. That's a really good idea for it. I think this could have been the first episode because of the kind of simple concept of Iron Man 1, Tony Stark gets saved, but everything changes so much afterwards that you do need the knowledge of a few episodes of the show to know that not every universe is all bad, or not everything is going to go bad for the characters in each of the universes. The last couple of episodes, I think, building up from being quite negative from episode 3 onwards, really, I could do with a what if episode that's a bit more lighthearted in the future. We have 3 more to go. I'm just hopeful that we have one that's a bit more lighthearted. I have a feeling the Thor episode, because Thor is treated like a joke in the MCU anyway, that they'll probably use that as a comedy episode in some sense. It'll probably be
there you go, light-hearted.
Yeah, it'll probably be a musical episode of What If.
Excellent stuff. Well, maybe they're just conditioning us for, the next phase of the MCU, which will be kind of Dark Reign-esque in its approach, where it will feel hopeless, and maybe then Korg will ultimately be your favourite character because he will bring that light, jokey relief.
Maybe. It's weird for me to say that though, isn't it? Because I'm the one that doesn't like the comedy movies in the MCU. I just think the show itself has 9 episodes to prove the concept effectively, and I think maybe this one just felt it was a bit of a downer seeing how many people get murdered in the episode for Killmonger to achieve his goal. That's probably what it is. That's probably the bit. But I think the episode itself, really good writing. I really like the storyline overall. So yes, certainly defend it, and certainly I'll watch it again when we go through What If again, of course.
Well, there was certainly more killed in Sokovia, I guess.
Yes.
Thanks, Avengers.
Just calling out very quickly for our listeners, Dark Reign was a comic book arc.
Yes.
Just so a very good, very, very good comic book arc, series arc, if you will, that spanned the whole Marvel universe.
Yeah, it was really good.
Absolutely, and commenting on your other point, John, Sokovia has been saved because no Tony Stark, no Ultron, right? So
no Scarlet Witch.
Sokovia incident, no Scarlet Witch. Yeah, loads of different
implications here. Chris, do you defend episode 6 of What If?
Yes, but this is a 50-50 job for me. I really enjoyed the episode. Fantastically written. The voice acting by the actors themselves is tremendous. The storyline is theoretically interesting on paper. It just didn't deliver that last part for me. You could have just said, what if Killmonger was Black Panther? Because that's essentially what it was. It was, yes, this one small change, but it was essentially Killmonger. How did he know to be beside Tony Stark at that point? Was he part of the 10 Rings? Like, there's too many other open thread. It's just basically, what if he was there at that one time?
Yeah.
Is the point. But then they opened the question while he was 200 miles away from his platoon, so why was he there? And they mentioned the 10 Rings, and that was nothing. Like, there's so many unanswered questions, and then it just felt too abrupt of an ending. It just needed a few more bows and a few more story kind of clasping it off. So, yes, I enjoyed it. I will probably enjoy it as much again the next time. It didn't fully deliver for me in some of the ones like the zombie was a better one than this. Captain Carter was way better than this in my opinion. And we've had so many episodes. This was one potentially what I would call a falter. The first, as I consider it, a falter. Now, still a good episode.
Yeah.
Still 3 out of 5 or more. It was just not what I have previously enjoyed. And again, do you know what? That's okay, because 6 days from now, I get another episode. And that's fine. And when I watch all 9 episodes again, this is one I'll just go, all right. So, there you go. Yes, I do defend, but ish. John, do you defend this episode of What If?
Yeah, I do defend this episode of What If. I might be going slightly against the grain on the podcast here. I'd give this 4 pork rinds out of 5. And I think I really enjoyed seeing this version effectively of Black Panther. And I like the idea of Iron Man not existing in a sense and what that has. And I think I guess as well, it was just, up until the point where it became obvious, there was still that notion that maybe Killmonger is actually good in this timeline with what he's done. That intervention there in 2008, saving Tony Stark, him coming into the Tony Stark, company that it shifted his focus away. And then you know, when he's ratting out Obadiah Stane, you know, he's dressed in white. It's that kind of, he seems full of good intentions. And it's only really, when you know, he has his jacket ripped off by the drone, that you know, you see the marks. He's still doing that, and that he hasn't. And actually, what the rescue of Tony Stark is about a more calculated Killmonger, a more long-term planning from Killmonger for the same goals that ultimately work. But it's not to say that everyone has been duped by him, as we see with Pepper Potts and with Shuri. So I really, really enjoyed this. I thought it was a good sort of twist on these two movies. I guess the main thing it does lead into the Black Panther, rather than focusing on then what would happen along the Iron Man timeline, really. But again, you know, we've talked about those implications, and that's the intrigue. So yeah, I do defend this episode of What If with 4 poor crimes out of 5. Poor being spelt P-A-W, of course.
Very good, very good. I thought it was pork rinds when you said that out loud.
That's probably just my accent.
It could be.
Gentlemen, let's go to the pub because I need to wet my whistle after that episode.
Yes, fellow quizzers and fellow defenders, we're back in the pub, drinking the finest ale from Wakanda, I believe. I have no idea what it's called, whether it comes in pints or whatever, because I have no idea of what they drink there. Maybe it's just a Budweiser, who knows. But yes, episode 6 of What If. This week's pub quiz question is, how much can Tony Stark spend on a slow Tuesday in Vegas?
Wow. Yeah, I'd like to be there in Vegas with him on a Tuesday, to be honest.
Definitely. Just to repeat that, how much can Tony Stark spend on a slow Tuesday in Vegas? Send your answers through to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. And you can send in all your questions via that route, where you'll be put into the automatronic voice of Google, who will pick the successful pub quizzer for our Funko Pops prizes that we'll be giving to the fellow quizzer with the most correct answers. So yes,
absolutely,
keep them coming. They are What If Funko Pops as well.
Yes, they are. But if you are the only one that gets all the questions right, remember, you will be straight into to getting those Funko Pops.
Yes, exactly. That is true. If there is an out-and-out leader, if they have zoomed past that finish line before everyone else, then of course, yes, then they will get the Funko Pops for sure. Yeah. So keep those answers coming in, fellow quizzers and fellow defenders.
And with that, let's go for an ad break. No, we don't have ad breaks here, but you can support us over on Patreon by heading on to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries. And I just want to say a quick personal thank you from all of us here at TV Podcast Industries to all our Patreons, where a single Wakandan dollar, or I don't actually know what the currency in Wakanda is, so we'll call it a Wakandan dollar, can help keep the podcast going. Yes. It helps keep the little tiny panthers that we have in a wheel running around, keeping our podcast engines flowing. Yes, that is. Or you can, for a single price of a coffee, you can head on over to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI, where you can keep our illustrious editor, producer extraordinaire, Derek, in coffee as he toils away into the wee hours on editing this show.
Yes.
So once again, thank you very much to our Patreons. If you'd like to support us there, please do, or buy Derek a coffee because he needs it. It's been a long week.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much to our patrons and to our coffee providers. And of course, you can support us by subscribing, rating us, and leaving a review as well, and sharing the podcast to your wide friends and family, relatives, you name it, supporting the podcast and sharing the podcast is, of course, sharing the good old love. So any support you can provide is very, very welcome. Let us get on to our feedback for this week's episode and a few others, I guess, from the previous episodes as well.
Absolutely, yeah. First piece of feedback comes in from Suzanne Nelson. Sent me an email to correct me on something I said in last week's episode. She says, I don't live there now, but I was born and raised in NYC and lived there in my 20s too, so I can assure you that there are definitely many trains that go from Grand Central 42nd Street, nice depiction on the TV show, of course, to New Jersey. I agree with Happy, though, not my favourite place to visit. Thanks for the great podcast. See, that's what happens. We don't live in New York, so I was steered wrong last week. Thanks for correcting me, Suzanne.
Yes, thank you, Suzanne. And good to know that, it's not your favourite place, but I will say it is home to Jay and Silent Bob, Red Bank, New Jersey. I will personally like it. I know that.
Yes, thanks so much, Suzanne. I did find it a little suspicious that there would be no trains between New York and New Jersey. But nonetheless, it is now cleared up.
Definitely, it wasn't what I was saying on the episode. I was saying about them going from Grand Central specifically. I think there was a comment that we'd received that had gone, that there was no trains going from that particular station to the Jersey station they were trying to get to, I think was what they were.
It becomes even more clearer now.
But I was wrong, so it doesn't matter. Thanks so much, Suzanne. Next email?
Yeah, thanks so much, Suzanne. Coffee and Vodka, came in with an email and said, greetings, duplicitous defenders. The spear ran through as a figurative as well as literal plot device throughout the episode, even if the point was hidden at first. Travelling through the body of the story linearly, direct and without pause, parallel to Killmonger's dispatching of his opponents. The last they left for us to envision for ourselves, Killmonger taking the throne after taking out T'Chaka as his final act of vengeance. It wasn't until the very end we saw the only real opposition or possibility of one. In the end, I found this one somewhat wanting due to no fault of its own. It held to the same taut, well-written, wonderfully voice-acted and excellently directed animation we've come to expect. Is it just me, or is this dark and depressing stretch of episodes begun with episode 3 starting to wear a bit thin? Savors Uatu. No rating due to an unsure frame of mind. Peace and stuff, Coffee and Vodka. Thanks so much, Coffee and Vodka, for that. I see you're agreeing with my fellow hosts here. That I think the thing is, I've kind of just latched onto it being well written, taught, wonderfully voice acted, and excellently directed animation, and I guess that was enough for me.
Yeah.
I'm a simple man of simple pleasures.
That's not simple. That's a really difficult thing to get right, and they definitely got it right in the episode. And no criticism of it. It is a great episode. I just don't know how I feel about it, just given that we've had this run, exactly as Coffee and Vodka says, this run of dark and depressing episodes for the last few weeks. Maybe that's all it is. Maybe if this week had been, as I said, the dance musical and featuring Thor, maybe I would have been looking this next week going, wow, at least it's better than the dance musical featuring Thor.
We could have got Rogers the Musical, which we know we're going to see in the upcoming smash hit Christmas time. What was Iron Man 3 Christmas themed Marvel Universe? It's going to be Hawkeye. We will see Rogers the Musical.
That's right.
Excellent
one
stuff.
thing that I thought was a funny joke in a 1 second spot in the ad. Let's not spend much time in the musical of Steve Rogers. And thanks so much, Coffee Vodka, for your feedback. You did mention something in there. This the idea that we're to envisage Killmonger finally taking the throne. When I read it first, or when you were reading it first there, John, I thought he was saying that I'd missed something in the episode. I thought that he killed T'Chaka in the episode. T'Chaka's not dead by the end of the episode. So I think what Coffee Vodka is saying is that that's probably the next step for Killmonger, is that he's going to go directly after the throne, right?
I would say so, yeah.
Correct.
Definitely. He is ambitious as old Killmonger. Thanks again, Coffee and Vodka.
Yes, thank you, Coffee and Vodka. Speaking of musical incarnations and so forth, over on Twitter, the wonderful Matt Murdoch gave us his thoughts. No musical thoughts this week from me. No Robert Downey Jr. or Gwyneth Paltrow either. But that's okay. Just about everyone else was there, including Gollum Snoke himself, Circus. I liked it better than the zombie episode, not as much as some of the earlier ones, but it was still good. Thanks for that, Matt. And yeah, Circus was definitely one of the better ones. He really is. He's director. Apparently he's doing the world tour at the moment with his upcoming Venom 2.
Yes, that is true. He was King Kong as well.
He was. So there you have it.
Thanks so much, Matt. Let's head on over to Facebook to get some feedback over there. We got some feedback from Victor Von Doom, who says, gonna need to rewatch this episode a few times before I can even begin to comment. Just wow. Also on Facebook, Dan Lee says, what if Tony Stark didn't die for once? Overall, an enjoyable episode, but I really had to look the other way for a couple of things. Like, to me, Tony felt really stupid in this episode. We know he's arrogant, but he's not stupid. And the pacing felt so rushed. This could have done with being 45 minutes plus.
Yeah, thanks, Dan, and thanks, Victor. We also got some Facebook feedback from Dr. Bob Phillips. So is this the anti-hero hero action flick genre take, where the goodie is a baddie, but quite a good baddie? For the first time in the series, I'm feeling my lack of deep Marvel means I probably missed something, though. Some theories bust, though. It's not all about love, and capes don't have a central place. But I have a new one. The only world that improves things is that with Captain Carter. Yes, she could have come back and sort of dispatched Killmonger quite easily, I reckon. But I do like the goody, baddie, bad, goody, good at being a baddie. I think that is pretty a neat way of looking at it, for sure. Thanks so much for the feedback, Bob.
Yeah, it's interesting, Dr. Bob. Yeah, Captain Carter's episode, is that the only one that ends where the entire world is completely better for the fact that she exists in it?
Yeah, that's one of your happy ones that you want.
It was.
Yeah.
The second one, we have Ego and Star-Lord coming together, but theoretically that could be stopped by Thanos and T'Challa Star-Lord. So maybe that one, but yes, so far Captain Carter, the world of Captain Carter is probably the only good one so far.
Absolutely. Let's hope we see more of that. Thanks so much, Dr. Bob. I've got some more feedback here. Tony Thomas on Facebook says, the concept was great. The execution, meh. All the redeemable qualities of Killmonger in the movie seem to have disappeared. Tony seemed like an arrogant buffoon. I hated the way the show treated Pepper. She seemed like a girl in love with someone who had no interest. I'm enjoying the show. This episode was definitely not my favourite. Interesting thoughts, Tony. I know with the length of the episodes, I'm sure there's things they have to kind of eliminate so they can get to the central core storyline of what's going on here, given how short it is. But yeah, there's probably bits missing from Killmonger that may have made him a bit more redeemable, if they'd been allowed to extend this episode for that reason. But some of those characters in Iron Man do feel very similar to this version of them for me. Thanks, Tony. Salima Kisler says, thoroughly enjoyed this episode. Killmonger is my favourite MCU villain. So anytime they want to work him in here, I'm for it. And it looks like there will be a sequel to this episode. Oh, we never know. Never know. There must be something coming up that I may not have seen, Salim. Sandy Resendez says, 2 words, General Ramonda. Oh yes, great to see Angela Bassett back here as General Ramonda this time. Very cool, very cool. Deanna DeBryan Maskell says, so many zigs and zags, my head was spinning. I forgot how unlikable Tony was early on. This episode showed how well developed both Tony and Killmonger were in their original movies. The other versions just made me care about them, and this version just left me horrified. Can we send a copy of T'Challa's speech to every warmongering politician? I fear too many that need to hear that message missed it entirely. I get what some are saying about Pepper being underserved, but it felt true to the original story, and honestly, I love the idea of Shuri Pepper team up. Is it just me, or is this series creating some serious girl power? Very cool, Diana. Yeah, I absolutely love that speech from T'Challa. Really, really cool. I'm so glad that it was in this episode. Thanks to everybody over on Facebook. Also got a few emails in after we were recording originally. First up on email, Victor Van Doom has put together his thoughts. He says, greetings, Derek, John, Chris, and fellow Defenders. Well, after several watches, I'm still sorting through the plot, consequences, and my own emotions regarding this episode. Nice to see more of the Watcher. Is Uatu getting closer to meddling? This is another episode where King T'Chaka is alive. So, no Iron Man equals no Avengers equals no Zemo assassination of T'Chaka. What could that lead to? Does this also mean no Cap? Or no Shield? Or, even worse, the planet is left open to Thanos and Loki's first attack? probably best I don't think about this too much. Pepper and Shuri will need some help to stop the coming war, but where could it come from? I sorely missed Robert Downey Jr.'s voice as Tony Stark, and hearing Chadwick Boseman's voice evoked the same emotion. Christian Everhart seems to be getting around in these episodes as well. Still a big fan of the series and, of course, your podcasts. Excelsior, Victor Von Doom. Thanks, Victor. Glad you're able to get your thoughts together. Doesn't mean no Cap and no Shield. They'll definitely be around. They have been around since before Tony Stark. So without him, they'll still be there. It may just be more difficult to close the hole to stop the attack on New York. But you never know. As we said, maybe it's Captain Marvel will come in and stop that, or maybe Shuri will give the suit to Pepper and Pepper will be the Iron Man for the Avengers or something like that. You never know. Thanks so much for your thoughts. Also got an email in from Jerry who says, hey guys, lots of fun twists in this episode. The Machiavellian nature of this episode was so fun to guess where it was going. Killmonger, so ruthless. My nitpick is the Dora Milaje would have figured out who killed T'Challa, no matter how much Killmonger covered his tracks. The episode ended too quickly. I need more, Jerry in Niceville. Thanks, Jerry, for that. There you go. I think that answers Victor's question. The Dora Milaje may help Pepper and Shuri with sorting out this issue with Killmonger and taking him down. They would likely figure it out given enough time. I totally get that, Jerry. And finally, for our feedback, we have our voicemail from Steve Brown.
Hey guys, it's Steve, and just finished the What If Killmonger rescued Tony Stark, and I don't know, I'm not as thrilled with this one as all the others. I don't know why. I can't put my finger directly on why I'm not as I don't know. I mean, the story was good. It was a little confusing to me in parts, so I'm gonna have to watch it again to really understand. But and I will watch this one multiple times. I'll probably appreciate it more once I hear your thoughts and everybody else's thoughts on it. All right, talk to you later.
To be honest, when I was writing the synopsis for the episode, it was really difficult to just get to the central core of exactly what was happening. Partly because Killmonger was hiding what was going on from everybody else and trying to work out exactly how he was twisting things to his benefit. It did take a bit of time and a couple of watches of the episode. So hope you enjoyed it a bit more after watching it the next time. But I know what you mean. It seems kind of central to most people's feedback about the episode that they just can't put their finger on why they didn't particularly like this one as much as the other episodes. Still good, but there's something about the episode. So interesting. We all kind of feel the same way, but you never know. Maybe in the future, if there is a second part, which some people seem to think that's coming up, it may make it even better. Thanks to everybody for sending in your feedback.
Don't forget, if you want to send us some voicemails, if you want to send us any feedback, you can head on over to tvpodcastindustries.com where you can do all that, or you can just email it to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. You can also find us on Twitter at tvpodindustries or over on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us.
Yes, thanks so much for joining us, fellow defenders. We will be back with episode 7 next week.
Absolutely. And more importantly, we know you've been asking. We will be starting our Why the Last Man coverage in the next couple of days. We'll be recording our thoughts about Why the Last Man, the first 3 episodes. We had a bit of a weird embargo on our coverage for Why the Last Man, where we got the episodes a few weeks ago, but couldn't talk about them until they came out 3 days after they came out in the US, in fact. But a week before they come out in Europe on Star and Disney Plus. So we are recording our coverage. We will have it out. We'll definitely have it out in time for the release on Disney Plus next week. I hope you've been watching, because I'm getting lots of great feedback from those of our listeners have been watching the episodes, really interested in the show, and definitely watch all 3 of the first couple of episodes. We're really looking forward to talking about that.
Yes, so if you have feedback for the first 3 episodes, make sure you head them on over to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Wacky, waveable, inflatable arm tube bad.
Thanks so much for joining us. Talk to you again next time.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks so much, fellow defenders. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep defending. Bye.